Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, adopted by General Assembly Resolution 61-106 of December 13, 2006. Article 24. Education. 1. Participating states recognize the right of persons with disabilities to education. In order to realize this right without discrimination and on the basis of equality of opportunity, participating states shall ensure inclusive education at all levels and lifelong learning, while striving, a. for the full development of human potential, as well as a sense of dignity and self-respect, and to strengthen respect for human rights, fundamental freedoms and human diversity. B. To develop the personality, talents and creativity of persons with disabilities, as well as their mental and physical abilities to the fullest extent. C. To enable persons with disabilities to participate effectively in the life of a free society. 2. In exercising this right, states parties shall ensure that a. Persons with disabilities are not excluded from the general education system on the basis of disability, and children with disabilities are not excluded from the system of free and compulsory primary or secondary education. B. Persons with disabilities have equal access to inclusive, high-quality and free primary and secondary education in their places of residence. C. Reasonable accommodation was provided, taking into account individual needs. D. Persons with disabilities have received the necessary support within the general education system to facilitate their effective learning. E. In an environment that is maximally conducive to the acquisition of knowledge and social development, effective measures have been taken to organize individualized support in accordance with the goal of full coverage. 3. Participating states shall empower persons with disabilities to acquire life and socialization skills in order to facilitate their full and equal participation in the educational process and as members of the local community. The participating states shall take appropriate measures in this direction, including a. Promote the development of Braille, alternative fonts, reinforcing and alternative methods and formats of communication, as well as orientation and mobility skills, and promote peer support and mentoring. B. Promote the development of sign language and the promotion of the linguistic identity of the deaf. C. Ensure that the education of persons, in particular children who are blind, deaf or deafblind, is carried out using the most appropriate languages and methods and modes of communication for the individual and in an environment that maximizes the development of knowledge and social development. 4. In order to promote the realization of this right, states parties shall take appropriate measures to recruit teachers, including teachers with disabilities who speak sign language and or Braille, and to train professionals and staff working at all levels of the education system. Such training covers disability education and the use of appropriate reinforcing and alternative methods and formats of communication, educational methods and materials to support people with disabilities. 5. States parties shall ensure that persons with disabilities can have access to general higher education, vocational training, adult education and lifelong learning without discrimination and on an equal basis with others. To this end, states parties shall ensure that reasonable accommodation is provided for persons with disabilities. Article 25. Health. States parties recognize that persons with disabilities have the right to the highest attainable standard of health without discrimination on the basis of disability. States parties shall take all appropriate measures to ensure that persons with disabilities have access to gender-sensitive health services, including rehabilitation for health reasons. In particular, the participating states a. Provide persons with disabilities with the same set, quality and level of free or inexpensive health care services and programs as other persons, including in the field of sexual and reproductive health and through public health programs offered to the population. B. Provide those health services that are needed by persons with disabilities directly because of their disability, including early diagnosis and, where appropriate, correction and services designed to minimize and prevent the further occurrence of disability, including among children and the elderly. C. Organize these health services as close as possible to the places of direct residence of these people, including in rural areas. D. Require health professionals to provide services of the same quality to persons with disabilities as to others, including on the basis of free and informed consent by, inter alia, raising awareness of the human rights, dignity, independence and needs of persons with disabilities through training and the adoption of ethical standards for public and private health. E. Prohibit discrimination against persons with disabilities in the provision of health and life insurance if the latter is permitted by national law, and provide that it is provided on a fair and reasonable basis. F. Do not discriminate against the denial of health care or services in this area or the receipt of food or liquids due to disability. Article 26. Habilitation and Rehabilitation. 1. States parties shall take effective and appropriate measures, including with the support of other persons with disabilities, to enable persons with disabilities to achieve and maintain maximum independence, full physical, mental, social and professional abilities and full inclusion and involvement in all aspects of life. To this end, participating states shall organize, strengthen and expand comprehensive habilitation and rehabilitation services and programs, especially in the field of health, employment, education and social services, so that these services and programs a. Begin to be implemented as early as possible and are based on a multidisciplinary assessment of the needs and strengths of the individual. B. Promoted involvement and inclusion in the local community and in all aspects of society, were voluntary and accessible to persons with disabilities as close as possible to their places of direct residence, including in rural areas. 2. The participating states shall encourage the development of initial and subsequent training of specialists and personnel working in the field of habilitation and rehabilitation services. 3. States parties shall encourage the availability, knowledge and use of assistive devices and technologies related to habilitation and rehabilitation intended for persons with disabilities.